Abraham lied twice about his wife, Ben.
He did.
Sarai and Sarah, at two different occasions. Apparently his wife was a very attractive woman. And in Egypt and in Gerar, whatever you like to say, he lies about his wife being his sister instead. How does that set up this movie? Well, we'll find out. Today we are going to review Days of Heaven, the 1978 film directed by the one and only Terrence Malick. This is the second episode in our 5-episode arc series. There we go.
You got it.
On Terrence Malick and his wonderful, thoughtful, thought-provoking, philosophical, theological, and ontologically challenging films. Welcome to the Movie Vault. I'm Zach.
And I'm Ben.
Sorry for the butcher.
The butcher is appropriate for a night like this.
Why do you say that?
I don't know. Actually, I don't know.
Okay.
Have you ever listened to A Butcher's Tale by the Zombies? Or The Butcher's Tale?
No.
It's a good song.
Have not.
It's a really good song.
Were you about to sing it?
I was going to spare the listeners of
Okay.
that. I've done it before, so I feel like they were probably, they had preemptively plugged their ears as soon as I mentioned music. They were like, okay. It's time to not do that, Ben. No, this is a really, really good movie, and it was very financially and, well, maybe not very financially, but it was critically successple for Terrence Malick, and especially coming off of his smashing cult classic debut, Badlands, A Tale of the American West. This would borrow a few things from Badlands, perhaps, in terms of the plot structure and plot points, but it would set it in a different place and time. And I think it built upon Badlands and it had a little bit more layered.
Your cat is pulling our wires.
Millie is in a very playful mood right now.
Oh, man.
She
is cute.
It's especially in terms of cinematography. There's more focus on landscapes and animals and nature than there was in Badlands. But it is a similar looking landscape. Like it's very flat. It's wheat fields. It's fairly isolated and rural. Actually, more rural and in an older time. This is 1916 pre-World War I America. Also, there is a emphasis on migrant workers, which there's a sequence in the start of the movie where Richard Gere's character, is his name Bill? He gets into an argument with a factory man in Chicago, and then that leads them on this, they have to skip town basically. Yeah. And head to the Panhandle of Texas, which is like in the northwest part of Texas.
Which you'd think that it's just the west part of Texas, because that seems like more of a panhandle.
Yeah. The west part of Texas also looks like where El Paso is and stuff. Also looks like a panhandle, but the panhandle is considered that jut that borders Oklahoma.
Yeah, the top part. I thought that would be like the top hat.
Yeah, that seems like a good name. I didn't come up with the geographic terms though. Yeah. So you'll have to figure out who did that. But there's also a girl involved. There's always a girl. There's two girls actually. There's the teen. I didn't know she was
Linda?
A teenager, but she's probably a younger teenager. Linda. She narrates the movie. And her sister Abby is the love interest of the movie. And then there's Bill, who we've already referenced. Richard Gere played him. And then the farmer, who does not have a name. And that is Sam Shepard's character. And then Robert Wilk plays the farm foreman, who is basically a father to the farmer. And that's basically the entire cast. I mean, everyone else, there's no other characters who really have major speaking lines. It's
very similar to Badlands, just a very limited cast, but it works really well because, I mean, you had Martin Sheen in the last one, and this one you have Richard Gere, two very good leading actors. For Terrence Malick coming into the film industry, these are his first two films and getting these great actors in these lead roles. I mean, it just shows the power of a script, right? Because Martin Sheen said, this is the most amazing script I've ever read. And Richard Gere, same thing. He came in for the script.
Yeah, and apparently he had swung big and tried to get Al Pacino Dustin Hoffman in this movie.
That's hard to get early on, yeah.
Yeah, hard to get early on. Also, I think sometimes, like, I guess hindsight is 20/20, but sometimes you're like trying to envision like Al Pacino in certain roles that you hear he was up for, and you're like, would it have been too much? Like
what?
Like would he have been too over?
Like
would it be too distracting that it's Al Pacino?
What roles would be distracting? Luke Skywalker?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I've heard of movies that people are like, oh yeah, Pacino. They wanted Pacino or De Niro for this, and you're just like,
Fall Guy.
Whoever got it instead of them did a good
Sonic.
job. And you're like, not Sonic. Yeah, Fall Guy. Fall Guy. They really wanted De Niro for like 79-year-old Robert De Niro in Fall Guy. Yeah, but I'm sure he would have been great. Hoffman would have been interesting too. John Travolta was supposed to be the lead role.
I think he could slide in.
Yeah, he could definitely do it. But he ABC. Travolta had a tumultuous career as a lead actor. Which is like part of the ethos of understanding Pulp Fiction, is that Travolta's star had faded, and all of a sudden it reappeared for at least a moment when he did Pulp Fiction. And part of it's things like this happening. So he won the role for Bill, and this would have been a good role. Like, I'm not sure people would have been like, oh my gosh, Travolta was so good in Days of Heaven. Like, now most people probably aren't really talking about this movie, but still it would have like added to his repertoire of movies. But he was in a television series that nobody talks about called Welcome Back, Kotter, which, and ABC didn't want him to be in this movie, so they didn't let him. And another missed opportunity.
That's why you always read the fine print.
The story of Travolta's career was like missing out, like taking the wrong movies and missing out on the right ones. So it's interesting that this is another chapter in that. But really, that's not what Days of Heaven is about. It's about Malick.
And also to the flip side of that, people are also talking about this movie. I mean, it's in the National Film Registry. This film is considered one of the best cinematographic films of all time. What's the guy's name? Fisk? I forget his first name.
Jack Fisk.
Jack Fisk did the first. He was the art director of Badlands, and now he's the art director of this as well. Two completely like natural landscaped films, and he just honestly, I don't use this phrase because it's like an early 2000s millennial phrase, but he went ham on this film.
He did. And most of it, as I'm reading through briefly, it was filmed like during the golden hour of the day, like right around sunset. So beautiful, just beautiful.
And this was filmed in Canada too.
Yeah, filmed in Canada. There was just attention to detail was off the charts with this movie, because it is more than just the plot experience. Like, a lot of this movie is spent just lingering in its background, which for a brisk hour-and-a-half movie is kind of cool that they still left time to do that.
Yeah, 100%.
And it helps, and it does aid the world building.
It does. I mean, it's just picturesque, every single shot almost, because you have this empty wheat field, right? And then you have this random mansion in the middle of this wheat field. And then you have like these giant steampunk tractors going through and cutting down the weed, and it's always at the golden hour, like you say, and it's just every shot was perfect. And there were some, like, it reminded me a little bit of Wes Anderson. There were a lot of shots that were pretty symmetrical throughout this film. There were also some aerial shots inside of the house, like when Abby was cooking. Like, those were some beautiful shots that and I think like 1978, this was revolutionary. It had to have been, even though this movie didn't necessarily take off. I think it made $3 million or something like that.
Yeah, it like basically made its budget back in a tiny bit more. So it wouldn't have been considered a success financially.
I would consider this under the hidden gem category.
Yeah.
I mean, this is just great.
He did win, I think Malick won Best Director at Cannes. So from a critical standpoint, it was great. Now I'm guessing I think Paramount, it's on Showtime, but we watched it on Paramount Plus. But Paramount was the company that produced this film, and I don't think that they necessarily care that much about Cannes if it doesn't lead to the film making money.
No,
because this is the U.S. filmmaking industry. It's very much about the dollar. Like, whatever's happening over there in Europe, they're great. It's great if you can win a couple awards over there, but they really don't actually care that much. It's all about the Oscars, which is way different than Cannes, way different standards and all of that. But I think that's what makes Malick stand out, is his the appeal to his films is much broader than just to the U.S. audience. But I think if U.S. audiences gave him a chance, they would like, especially these two movies. These are like classic. I think I would consider these classic American movies.
Oh,
like that if you were like, well, Ben, I don't give a crap about that European art house stuff. I don't care about that mumbo jumbo from New York or LA. I just want a good old fashioned Western, or I want something about America. I'd be like, well, I have this for you. And that would be Terrence Malick. I mean, sure, go watch Clint Eastwood movies and watch, which some of those are actually foreign, but and you can go back and listen to our one of our first arcs, which was the Man with No Name trilogy.
Do we count that as an arc?
I mean, it's before we coined arc, but it was kind of the idea. Was an arc there, yeah, that's what I would say about these first two. I think they're fantastic, and they build upon each other. And
what does the second film take from the first?
Well, there's some like elements that are similar, is what I'm saying.
Okay.
So it's like he like expands upon a story structure, I would say.
Okay.
Because the story structure is actually not that there is two characters in love. They make bad decisions.
Bonnie and Clyde-esque.
Different bad decisions. They lead to someone being murdered.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a chase at the end.
Yeah.
How the specific elements of the plot go around are different in each movie, which they should be, because you shouldn't be making the exact same movie twice. But I'm just saying, like, the structure was a lot more similar than I think anticipated it would be.
Yeah, I think you're right. And it's interesting because we talked about, like, what is the direction that Malick takes? And we're going to get into the larger themes here. He goes more into the philosophical, into the theological. And you start to see that here, right? Like I said at the beginning of this episode, he goes straight into these biblical concepts. You have the Sarah and Abraham analogy. You have the locusts, the doomsday locusts, whatever, the plague. And you have just all of these different stories kind of. I mean, these are straight from the Bible. I mean, just literally directly taken out of the Bible. And he's using them that's why these stories work, is because they're straight from the Bible. And also, I would say the one thing he lacks that he goes more into in the later films that he does is he doesn't necessarily use the biblical themes to like make a point. I think these were more for just cool effect, maybe.
Yeah.
Unless you think the locusts. Now, I could say like the locusts do represent God's judgment on him, and we can get into this because Abby at the beginning of the film said, the good people go to heaven, the bad people don't, right? And God doesn't listen to the bad people after they do bad things. And that was her theology that she had. And if we're going to stick by her theological framework, then at the end of the film, her decision to lie to the farmer this whole time inflicted judgment upon the farm and brought all these locusts and made everyone, die. So maybe it plays into the themes, but it's not like the biblical stories themselves. Maybe what I'm trying to say is it's not like the themes that the Bible is trying to get across is being put across. He's kind of doing like the fake verse that Quentin Tarantino uses in Pulp Fiction in Ezekiel, right?
Yeah.
And uses that for his own purposes.
Yeah, he's just doing like a literary reference here.
Exactly.
It's not anything necessarily. Yeah, it's not a direct extrapolation of like, because even the story of Abraham and lying about his sister, it didn't play out quite in the same way, right? Like this was a little bit more. Abraham made his decision out of fear, I think, in both contexts. Like he was afraid of what would happen. Where this was more of a plan, like we're out to get this guy.
Yeah,
it's a con.
Yeah, it's like even premeditated.
They were both wrong, but the intent behind why they were doing them were different. Obviously, God would see both as sins. That He would just judge them in different ways based on the intent of the sin and how the sin played out, consequence-wise. And I think the locust, portrayed that well with, whether or not you would consider that God's direct judgment or something He allows to happen, or it's a coincidence. But obviously, we know that God is in control of coincidences, so probably not a coincidence that you men men scheme and plan, but God has the ultimate say in what happens. And that's like a literal representation of that, with them planning to inherit this farm with this wealth, and then the locusts ravaging it. And then eventually, and that's around the same time that the farmer discovers the con that Abby and Bill are playing, and is intentionally burning areas of the field, and just kind of, going crazy because it's like a rug that's been pulled out from under him. Although he did not take the wisdom of the foreman, who saw through Bill and Abby, like pretty soon after, the marriage happened and everything.
It was obvious.
Told him that it was a con.
Yeah.
Because everyone knew that they had a very close relationship for brother and sister. Like, you can't hide these things out there in the open,
And they didn't. I mean, they were out in the open when he found them.
Yeah.
I mean, that was stupid.
Right.
At least go in the bedroom.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was so obvious, but when you are so blinded by love, this stupid thing. No, I'm just kidding. But it's something you can be blinded by. People can equate so much value to somebody that they find attractive that they knowingly or somewhat knowingly will excuse lots of red flags. This happens all the time. They see this person, they're like, this is the person, and they turn that person into the person they want them to be, and they want to believe they are, and not the person, and they don't see them for who they actually are until it's too late, and it's already caused damage in their life.
Yep.
This happens far too often. It's very difficult because these emotions are powerful, and if you let yourself into them too early without heeding the advice of wise people, then you could end up in situations like this.
And not to go Andrew Huberman on this, but like there
I
are
did not think you were going to say Andrew Huberman's name on this podcast.
There are chemicals that are released in our these neuromodulators are released in our brains when these emotions are elicited, that kind of like reconvince our brain of what truth is in our lives. So it's like interesting that you brought that up. This has nothing to do with the movie.
This is a really like specific thing you could take away from the movie, but it does happen in the movie because you should be able to see that this is a con.
But it's like the reward systems in our brain of what we know is truth, and like what we need to prove to be true in our brain can be like distorted by these neuromodulators. And again, it's sin, right? But like sin can manifest as physical things. So.
Right. Yeah. Obviously, in our fallen world, then there's ways that even our brains are affected.
Yeah, 100%. Like, I'm dumb.
Yeah.
You're dumb.
You just realize you're dumb. So we've kind of like tiptoed around what the plot is, but basically it is this love triangle. That's not really. I mean, it kind of turns into a triangle because Abby is genuinely in love with both guys, especially because she starts to realize that the farmer is actually like kind of a better guy than Bill is.
Yeah. Now, at the end of the day, they're both murderers, right?
Yeah, at the end of the day, it seemed like they both weren't great guys because the way he reacted to the whole thing and, started physically abusing her and immediately going to murder. I'm not saying that there wasn't like a space for appropriate consequences for them, but he certainly, he immediately went for revenge instead of a measured response to realizing what was happening.
I think this plays into Terrence Malick's backstory because he grew up in Oklahoma, right? Maybe a more rural area. And he really has a thing so far for women who have no other choices for men because there just aren't that many people around, right?
So if you get a bunch of bad apples around and that's who you have, then you're stuck with it.
Exactly. Young women kind of who are malleable, like we talked about in the last episode, have to just kind of deal with and stick up with these men that are kind of trash.
Yeah. And in some ways, the rich guy promised a different life than she could ever have. And this is something that still happens. You hear girls joke about it. They're like, I just need to find a rich guy. And it's somewhat true. You could be like, well, it's a high reward, maybe sometimes high risk proposition where you could genuinely find someone who does already have a lot of money and could provide for you very well, and that it could turn out great. But then you have to remember that sometimes money gives people power, and power sometimes corrupts the way that people think that they can, power and money combined. They start to view people as things that can be bought and purchased, and they're sort of could be viewed as another product or thing that, is used in their life for other purposes other than, genuine love and affection. Well, all of these things are really warped and mixed together in the human brain. Like, it may not be that the rich guy is exactly thinking that.
Yeah.
But how it plays out could sometimes play out like that. So it's something to be careful of. I mean, not that you should not go be with someone because they're, doing well. That's not true. It's just a reality of with added money comes added temptation sometimes to use it for bad things.
My grandpa always said, marry rich the first time.
Yes.
I mean, that's what the premise of the film is.
Yeah, essentially. She went for the wrong guy first.
Yeah, but on purpose, right? She married rich the first time. Now, the voiceovers. I believe that I think I read something that the voiceovers were basically bandages to a broken film. Where it took 2 years to film this film in Canada. And Terrence Malick did not like the way that the movie flowed together. So then he added voiceovers in post-production. Kind of like to copy Badlands' Sissy Spacek. Yeah. Spacek.
However you pronounce her name.
And I believe it worked really well. I think the voiceovers were good in this film, and it seemed seamless. But I guess I would have never guessed that it was to patch up, a lack of flow in the film.
Yeah, I'm sure. I guess you could see how that could happen. There's not a whole lot of dialogue.
Yeah.
So,
your cat's on the table.
Yeah, I know. Millie's on the table. I'm gonna go get her off the table real quick. Just fill in some space.
She knows how to film it. Well, I'll keep talking to you. Yeah. She's off now. Well, I was gonna say. So yeah, they shot all these after the film had already been done in Canada, and they didn't even do it in Canada when they redid it. And then they did a few other close-up shots of specifically Shepard to fill in some of his gaps in his story arc. So anyway, I guess it was a mess in post-production, and it's one of those rare instances where they took a mess and kind of made it good, right? You always hear like, oh, there are so many reshoots, so it's not going to be a great film, and that's usually a good indicator that it's not going to be a great film, right? I mean, the last 10 Marvel movies have had so many reshoots, but here we are with many reshoots, and it turned out amazing, apparently. So... And it's interesting, too, like, after this, maybe he was so sick of it, and that's why he waited 20 years to make his next film. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think people are always critical of voiceovers in general, but we talk about a lot of directors who actually have used voiceovers to good effect, like Scorsese in Goodfellas, or in, what's the finance movie?
Wolf of Wall Street.
Wolf of Wall Street, yeah. Both of those.
Or Blade Runner.
Blade Runner.
No, it's considered the worst one, right?
That's the worst one. So it's a tool. Ultimately, it's a tool, and I think people have watched enough bad voiceovers that they kind of just poo-poo voiceovers as being always bad, but it's not the case. And maybe it is also a preference thing. Like, maybe just some people have an aversion. They feel like they can't stand voiceovers or whatnot. I personally am like, usually if it's a fairly well executed voiceover, I don't mind it because it just doesn't bother me. But maybe it's because you pick the right movies, and it certainly can be like a crutch to be like, okay, now I have to explain things. Like,
and that's what was the problem with Blade Runner. He was explaining obvious things.
Yeah, man, you have to find that balance. And Millie has to find the balance of getting off the table.
How many times will we have to talk about Millie? In the last 3 episodes, it's been like lots of Millie things. Millie likes to get on the table, and it bothers Ben. She has like a scratcher thing to get her claws dimmed, but it doesn't work that well because when she comes up to me, she scratches right through my socks.
Yeah, she has very sharp claws. We probably need to trim them.
Yeah,
right, Millie.
I agree.
But she also bites, so
she doesn't. I mean, it's not really a bite though.
That's true. It's more of a
gnaw.
Gnaw.
Yeah. So the soundtrack was made
by the one and only Ennio Morricone.
Oh, so good. He, of course, is most well known for the Man with No Name trilogy, correct?
Correct. That's like his magnum opus.
But he's done many films.
Yep, and this was
Many
around the
famous
same
films.
time as those films. Within a decade or so.
Yeah, within a decade, yeah.
And I mean, obviously, he was coming off the back of those films with probably some vigor and some money. So it was really good. I still think the Badlands soundtrack might have been a little bit better, and that wasn't Morricone.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely, I think it maybe stands out a little bit more. Like, but the whimsy of it stands out a little bit more. This was maybe more of a traditional soundtrack for what you would expect a movie that was in the setting would be like.
And now if we're also thinking about Terrence Malick in general, I think this film, even though it's his second film, is already a great shift in his career. Which I think he's going, like his first film was whimsical and kind of funny, dealing with serious subjects. This is a lot more serious. There isn't really much to laugh about in this film at all.
No, not really.
Not really many fun moments. Not really. I mean, it's beautiful.
Other than the flying circus. But
sure.
Yes.
Yeah, that was weird, to be honest. And I believe that this tone kind of sticks and lands for his latter films. Just kind of the serious theological themes. Now, what do you think about the overarching theme of this film being God's judgment?
Yeah, that seems like a fair assessment for a really big picture overall perspective on the movie, understanding actions and consequences and sins and judgments and so forth. Because it is, well, like you said, it was talked about at the very start of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Good people go to heaven and bad people go to hell, and God doesn't communicate with them. Are we supposed to, by the end of the movie, think about that a little bit differently? Because is it that God doesn't talk to people who are bad, or is it that there's judgment, and that is the communication? Like, the judgment is the communication.
I don't know. When I heard her say like God doesn't hear them, it's like he doesn't hear their cries. So like
if they were doing the wrong thing and then all of a sudden they were like, I'm in a position where I need.
Yeah. Or like God doesn't give them his favor.
Right.
Something like that. That's how I read it. So I think it's the same thing.
Bless them for being intentionally deceptive.
No. And I think that's why she felt so conflicted the whole film, right? Because she's kind of doing it also to protect Bill from the farmer. So she kind of got herself in a pickle where she has to lie for the sake of this other guy, right? So now it's like, okay, she can either let him die or lie, you're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. So it also kind of goes with like, it reminds me of just making like a rash vow, like Jethro, anybody who puts themselves in one of those tough positions. So that's another theme that could be in here. But yeah, I think the overarching is God's judgment, because it's like this entire film is doing something she knows is wrong and living into it for years and years, right? Even marrying a guy, making a sham marriage just to get some money. And then all these locusts come. It's literally a plague, a biblical plague comes and destroys the whole farm. And they try to do a controlled burn, but then they're in a field literally farming, and it's almost like Cain and Abel, where the farmer tries to kill Bill, and then later on Bill kills the farmer. Kill Bill. That's kind of funny.
It goes back and forth multiple times, because he almost tries to kill the farmer when they go pigeon hunting, and he just misses his moment.
Yep.
And he almost catches on to it too, the farmer. At that
and he should have. That was so dumb.
Yeah.
This is why you listen to your elders, right? If an elderly person comes up to you and says, "Hey, your wife is cheating on you," and it's someone that actually cares about you and like maybe has like a good word, do not ignore that.
Don't tell them that you need to go to the North Field.
Yeah, we talked about this during the film, Ben, but like sometimes the nicest guys are the most naive, and sometimes they just ignore their problems and move on as if there's nothing there. But it just festers, it just grows, and the lie gets worse.
Yeah, it doesn't make anything better.
No, it makes it much worse. And the farmer, I think, knew much longer than. Because he was suspicious and then let it go, right? And then he still had his suspicions going, obviously. So at some point, he should have just talked to her and said, hey, I kind of know what's going on. But I don't know. Once Richard Gere's character, once Bill was gone, I guess the farmer was fine. But when Bill came back, yeah, I guess I would want to kill him too.
Yeah. So Roger Ebert had some thoughts on this movie and the themes. And he did a reevaluation in 1997. So I don't know what his initial review was. But I don't know if this was one of his going back on his ratings or if he just wanted to reevaluate the film. But he said, Terrence Malick's Days of Heaven has been praised for its painterly images and evocative score, but criticized for its muted emotions. Although passions erupt in a deadly love triangle, all of the feelings somehow feel held at arm's length. This observation is true enough if you think only about the actions of the adults in the story. But watching this 1978 film again recently, I was struck more than ever with the conviction that this story is the story of a teenage girl told by her, and its subject is the way that hope and cheer have never been beaten down in her heart. We do not feel the full passion of the adults because it is not her passion. It is seen at a distance as a phenomenon like the weather or the plague of the grasshoppers that signals the beginning of the end.
I think it's fair because even when she saw Bill get shot, I mean, there's this amazing scene where the actress for Linda just kind of like shakes her head, like it's like exactly what a kid would do seeing something like that that's super traumatic, like just kind of like her butt. She doesn't know how to move. She like starts twitching, and I mean, it just shows that like she's watching all this happen, and obviously she's narrating it same way as Badlands was, and it's with Sissy Spacek. But
it's interesting because with it being from the perspective of a teenage girl, probably around the same age that Sissy Spacek's character was, 15 years old or so, and but it's even more removed. Like she's even more removed from the like actions and consequences, other than the fact that it's her sister and she's like tied to her in order to eat, and she's like dragged into. It's kind of representative too of like kids who are in, maybe parents got divorced or whatever, and then they're let's say they're with their mom, and their mom has like a new boyfriend or gets remarried, and now you're just inserted into all of these new dynamics. And sometimes there's more than one, like, so it just gets very confusing, and you're a kid, and she's maybe on the older end, so she can kind of understand some of these things a little bit better than if you were younger, but it's still like not your decisions. But they're still very much affecting your life. So this idea that hope is not beaten down, and you like, she's pushing beyond these the things, like we talked about this in the last episode, I think, about adults and how sometimes they don't grow up and decisions become and then the way that you react to your potentially not mature parents or guardians in this context and will have a huge indication on where your life goes in the future.
100%.
So in that sense, he wouldn't necessarily, I guess, make the argument that it's mostly about God's judgment, but I think Ebert would probably have missed that observation to begin with. So
maybe, I don't know.
Still, I do think there's an aspect that can be easily missed about the significance of her being the narrator of the film, and just of her character in general, because you get so focused on the adult characters.
For sure.
You can kind of forget about Linda.
Yeah, I think it's fair. And I'm just not too concerned on whose perspective it is. Because she's not even in every scene, so like to some degree you can't say that.
Yeah, it's only one. I mean, it's something that can be gained from the film, but I don't know it's the most impactful thing that can be learned. It's just another perspective.
Was this Roger Ebert when he was like severely ill and couldn't think through?
This is before that, but
okay.
But he is a very observant guy, so I'll give him that. I might not have I definitely would not have pulled that all out of the movie in the first watch.
No, not at all. But that was his second watch.
Yeah, his second watch.
To be fair.
From 1978 to 1997, he had watched the movie 2 times. And he claims to be an expert, so. To
be fair, like, he probably has watched so many films.
Yeah.
Had to, I mean.
Yeah, he's had to watch so many terrible films. I mean, it is such a well-shot film. I cannot underemphasize. It's one of the best shot films I've ever watched.
Yeah. I mean, there's a shot where, like, that random house, the mansion is in the background, and there's just all these locusts swarming, and they get these close-up shots of these locusts, and it's like, man, 1978 had higher
higher resolution cameras than our iPhone 16s right now.
Yeah, it just doesn't feel like people make movies like this anymore. I'm gonna sound like an old person.
I was about to say we sound like a broken record of old people.
Like
boomers.
maybe it's just I don't know where to look for these movies now. Like
Yeah.
maybe they're being made and I just don't know. I'm sure like some of these shots, if they had the technology they have now, could be like crazy. But there is an appeal sometimes to the rougher around the edges older filmmaking.
I think
styles.
especially for this, it's almost like there's wheat on the camera, you know?
Yeah. You can smell it. You can feel the atmosphere.
That's next in movie going experiences.
Yeah, 4D, just like living, like feeling everything the characters are feeling. Oh my, the character's in a fire. Now I feel like I'm burning.
Like a Saw movie would be horrible.
Oh yeah.
All right, here's a blade.
You can feel the actual pain in the area of the body that the character's experiencing.
It's a 4D experience. That'd be amazing. Or like a doctor movie and they actually perform surgery. That'd be nice. The Ben Carson documentary.
Unsurprisingly, it won Best Cinematography as it's the only Oscar that it won.
Okay.
It was nominated for Best Costume Design, Best Original Score, and Best Sound. So none of the like really big ones, but all of the ones that really mark your film as like a detailed film, right? Like if you have good costume design, usually there's a preference towards period pieces because there's more thought that has to go into the costume making when you have to be like, what does this costume fit with this period of time?
Yeah, Star Trek doesn't count, you know.
Yeah. Whereas if you're making your own, you can do whatever you want. So I guess it just doesn't, hit as hard. But yeah, Cannes nominated for the Palme d'Or and Best Director, which he won, and later he would win the Palme d'Or for a different film, which we might be reviewing soon.
Yeah, that's the fourth one.
Yeah, the fourth one, Tree of Life.
Yeah.
Spoiler, won the Palme d'Or. So yeah, it did really well with the Europeans. So we know that's the mark of a good movie.
So you might be asking, man, I don't care about what these Europeans are saying, but this is a great film.
Yeah.
The Europeans, I will say, it might be nice to do like 20 episodes on different types of European cinema arcs, but
yeah, I really want to do a Czech New Wave arc, but
what's that?
The Czech New Wave.
Yeah, I don't know any.
Czechoslovakia.
I mean, I know what that is, but like,
it's like the movement of cinema in the late 60s from Czechoslovakia. I've watched zero films.
Okay, I was about to say, like, what was the movement? Yeah.
I know of it existing.
If you had to summarize the French New Wave.
French New Wave, I know enough to be dangerous. I mean, it basically was, this wave of filmmakers, Artur Thiry and Jean-Luc Godard and Francois Truffaut, and they did movies that were less narrative driven and more character driven, and they taught you got the French experience about people who are like kind of have a lot of money and they don't care about anything, and they just watch them for an hour and a half. No, it's kind of like that, and then that turned into other stuff. So French New Wave. This is the new Hollywood movement is what at least Malick's first two movies are considered a part of. And Scorsese, who, we almost say his name as much as QT at this point, at least I do. But he was part of the new Hollywood movement, as was probably William Friedkin with The Exorcist. Yeah. So New Hollywood, I would say, like, as far as the movie vault's concerned, the New Hollywood is probably one of the biggest movements that we, are kind of influenced by that we don't really talk about at all. I think we have talked about it. Yeah. But we've never really named it. Yeah. Maybe because I didn't even associate these things. Like the things like the Hays Code, we talked about the Hays Code being scaled back and all of that. Those are all directly related to the New Hollywood. Because like Bonnie and Clyde was like one of the first films of the New Hollywood movement. And then that movie is like, if you like Bonnie and Clyde, you're going to love Badlands because they're very similar. And, Kubrick and Vietnam War films and political, like all this stuff, like stuff that we've covered is all kind of tied to the New Hollywood. And it was so awesome in the 70s. And now we're back to like the bland, bloated, like corporate, boring Hollywood.
Yeah.
And even nowadays, the independent movements are starting to feel very corporate in a sense.
You think of A24?
Well. Yeah, with A24. So our ability to just let filmmakers be filmmakers and not be part of some sort of corporate thing, it's hard. And maybe it's just the filmmakers' choices too at the end of the day, because Robert Eggers chose to do Nosferatu and not some sort of original idea that he had on his own.
Yeah, I think that's true.
I mean, I'm not saying it's not going to be fantastic. It'd probably be a really good adaptation of Nosferatu, but he may, or even Denis Villeneuve. Okay, Dune.
Yeah, that's
Dune
a good
Part
point.
2, amazing. I mean, Dune. I haven't seen Part 2. I'm going to sit down and watch it here soon. But incredible movies, but they still are part of this broader IP. So you could make the argument that directors are just learning how to make the best out of the era that we live in.
Sure.
And just get the absolute most out of IP. So instead of sitting here and complaining about how we can't make movies like Days of Heaven anymore, which we probably can, we just probably won't know about them for another 10 years until
that's fair. Yeah, because they didn't know about this. Yeah,
somebody digs it up out of somewhere and it's this was actually a really good movie. So we just have to wait and be patient.
And that's a good point.
But I like
too.
complaining. I like being the old guy who's complaining about.
Yeah, me too. I agree. But if we're gonna do really good IP films, and that's gonna be the thing of the new directors, can we at least do some bigger, some other one, like the Minecraft movie?
Yeah,
that has Jack Black in it, and I don't know. I'm just thinking these. There is a lot of IP out there that's coming out. The Mario movie, which Mario movie is fine, but imagine a Quentin Tarantino Mario movie. It would never, ever, ever, ever happen, right? Ever. But a Martin Scorsese Zelda movie.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering how far does this go?
You're saying they're not the IP, the companies, they're not going far enough. I mean, I would argue.
No. I'm saying,
Barbie,
what if they go far?
Barbie with Greta Gerwig, that was the biggest swing I've seen a company of that caliber. Mattel going for Greta Gerwig, that was a little bit out of.
Okay, that's fair. Chloe Zhao in the Eternals.
Yeah, that was an interesting pool there.
I will say she was an up-and-coming director, though. All she had really that was big was Nomadland.
And, oh, man, there could not be two different movies than Nomadland and The Eternals. Two movies that I don't really like that much, but for different reasons.
Yeah. Fair enough. Sorry, Chloe.
Not to deny that Chloe Zhao is talented. I just think they didn't appeal to me for various reasons.
Yeah.
But, I was quite impressionable at the time with the Oscar buzz. I think Nomadland is an interesting movie, but just not. It's never gonna tickle my fancy like Days of Heaven will.
Yeah,
or a movie like that.
I agree with you.
They should. I was trying to think of what's the biggest IP things that haven't come to the screen yet, because they keep recycling things too. Now there's going to be a Harry Potter TV series. Mm-hmm. The biggest TV series on Max right now is The Penguin. So and we're just redoing The Sopranos and then attaching a DC thing to it and hiring a really good actor, Colin Farrell. Okay, so you're putting a lot of good pieces together. You can't deny that.
Yeah.
But then it just seems diminished when you're now but it has to be tied to the DC universe to be relevant. Yeah. It's holding it. It feels like it's holding it back.
Yeah.
I want comic books to always be in this phase where it's always sort of they're controversial for the wrong reason now. It used to be that comic books were not cool and that directors were working hard, like Sam Raimi, and people you go back and watch those Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies. The reason that they're so good is because the comic book movies were not cool back then, and they were having Willem Dafoe was in it, and they were doing these things that no one had ever seen before. It was awesome. Same with The Dark Knight. You take Christopher Nolan and you put him with the Batman. It's oh my gosh, but now we got Matt Reeves making 5 gritty Batman movies that are going to be they're going to look great, and I'm probably going to like most of them, but at the same time, what could Matt Reeves do outside of Batman, Yeah. Or why do we need more than one even? Maybe just having one is enough, but it's not enough. And there's a big enough market for comic books that it's never going to matter, and they'll never listen to me. So I don't know why I waste my breath talking about it.
No, I think that's a great thought. I mean, just the idea that like, what are we using? What resources are we using where? You know, if we had to corporatize Hollywood, which it's already corporate, but if we had to kind of be like, okay, let's take an inventory of Hollywood. What IP do we have? What original ideas do we have? And then what people do we have? Right?
Maybe it's sort of the balance thing too. It feels like too much focus. Is what you're saying. Like
exactly.
Too much focus is on the IP, and it's taking away from. Like eventually, you're gonna run out of stories because you're not putting enough energy trying to make new ones.
Exactly, and we're reusing a lot of things. We're in the decade of sequels, right? I mean, the last 5 years have had more sequels than I've ever seen ever.
Yeah,
like
every animated movie needs a sequel.
But again, like it does make money. Like Inside Out 2 is like in the top 10 highest grossing films of all time.
And it wasn't even a bad movie. Like it was actually kind of a good movie.
It was good, but I'm saying it's good. But like
that's what's destroying my argument.
But can we be like, are we allowed to complain then? Like if we like these things that are coming out?
Yeah, I know, probably not.
But we're liking a small percentage of them.
But then again, they still throw Yorgos Lanthimos money for some reason. So I don't know.
I mean, was his last film? I haven't seen it. Was it good?
I mean, it was good, but it's just really odd that the business of Hollywood, it's like all this IP and then they're throwing like money at Yorgos Lanthimos to make like really weird like things that are obviously not going to appeal to most audiences. It's like so far the other direction that it seems like they're just like, they know they're not going to make money off of this.
Sure.
And
but then I would also say
like
on the other side of that,
he somehow has enough connections that he can just keep making movies.
You're right about that, but I would say on the other side of that, they give Francis Ford Coppola, $1 billion to make this Megalopolis, and it's a flop, and apparently it's a horrible story with no like plot.
Yeah, but he also self-financed, so it was a little bit of that too.
Okay, fair enough.
But somebody did have to distribute it. But yeah, I mean, if you make The Godfather, I guess it just goes to show that the sky's the limit for you. You can make the worst movies ever, and you'll still get buzz.
Yeah.
Although at some point, also being the director of The Godfather only gets you so far. People won't try to rationalize your bad movie and make arguments that it's a good movie, because I have not seen anyone like legitimately make an argument that Megalopolis is good. Like at the most, I've seen people say, well, it's a mess, but I kind of liked it because I like watching a mess. Somebody compared it to Inland Empire, and people were going off on them. They're like, no, Inland Empire was a good movie. Do not compare Inland Empire to Megalopolis.
Inland Empire is...
Just because it's confusing doesn't mean it's bad.
I agree. Listen to our Inland Empire episode.
But it could be incoherent, and that might be a problem.
But Inland Empire is also pretty
incoherent. But it was trying to. It had an intention.
Yeah.
Or maybe it didn't. I don't know.
Its coherency is the fact that it's incoherent.
Or Lynch built up enough cachet to where we believe we're willing to like buy into.
Do you think Inland Empire is his biggest prank?
Could be. Like maybe he's just like laughing. Well, he's not laughing all the way to the bank because it didn't really make any money.
No, he's not.
He's laughing just like thinking about how everyone is trying to dissect this work, and it really just has no answers, and it really is just a dream.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not anything more than that, because our dreams don't make sense.
Yeah.
So maybe that's Lynch's whole point. But yeah, this is I guess we
diverged. Yeah, we diverged a little bit. I gave it 4.5 stars.
I also
simply because of the cinematography.
Yeah, it's high level. Malick is high level stuff.
I feel like we're playing with fire.
Playing just because of the scene.
I mean, what did we do? What did we do 2 movies ago that I was like, eh?
Was it Blair Witch Project?
Yeah. Okay. So like we're coming off of that, so this is refreshing.
Yeah. We love cinema. Again.
We're also not in like the deep trenches of Terrence Malick 3-hour films that are like heavy in theology. So I'm also enjoying the shallowness right now a little bit.
Yeah, it's kind of a nice mix. It's that he can do both. So I mean,
he built his way up.
I'll enjoy those other movies, but I think there is a reality to where it shouldn't also the filmmaking industry should never be you should never get the feeling the movie vault wants it to be all 3-hour Terrence Malick movies. We are the We are the number one
hour and a half supporters.
Approver. Yeah, I was trying to think of the word, but we support hour and a half movies. We love hour and a half movies. I mean, you can make really good movies in an hour and a half. Terrence Malick just made 2. And I guess you can also make really good 3-hour movies, but we would just give you more caution before you do that. Make sure that you're ready.
Make sure it's worth our time.
Yeah,
like the extra hour and a half.
Yeah. Because you're basically saying, I want you to watch 2 movies, but only log it as 1 on Letterboxd.
Yeah, exactly. Lowering your total count at the end of the year.
Right.
But you can catch up with some George Méliès films.
True.
I doubt either of us have any
movie highlights.
Yeah.
Considering, no, I don't.
We recorded both these in the same day.
I watched like 1 episode of True Detective and 1 episode of Friends today.
Okay.
And I have to say I'm really enjoying True Detective.
Good.
It's good.
So you're really
TV.
On the TV show train right now.
Yeah, it's hard now that I have Max. It's like that's where all the good TV shows are. So
Twin Peaks, True Detective, Friends.
Yeah, Friends.
It's a new bent.
Yeah.
You're turning into me. I'm definitely more of a TV show
trying
guy.
to be maybe into the new year trying to balance out a little bit more. Maybe next year I will intentionally go for a lower movie count, try to be really selective with the movies I watch, and then balance it out with more TV and then also reading more. I
think reading is a good shift. Yeah,
reading would be a good shift.
Blood Meridian.
Just to put less. I feel like I have all of this artificial pressure that I need to like watch these movies, but it's all fake. It's not real. I don't actually need to watch any of them, and I just need to enjoy the ones that I do watch.
But if we want to go big, Ben, if we want to go big,
yeah. I mean, I think I feel like to some degree like I owe it to the podcast to further my movie knowledge and all of that, and that's great. And I think I am doing that slowly but surely. But I don't ever need to watch more than the amount of movies I watch this year in 1 year. I don't think it needs to be more than that.
Yeah.
100 I also probably will just realistically not have the time anyway.
If you do 100 a year, I mean, that's like 7,000 by the time you're
70.
Yeah.
That's crazy. But then there's people on Letterboxd who have watched 30,000. So, and they're like 35 years old.
Oh my goodness.
Or they're faking it. I mean, that's always a possibility on the internet.
So that you're telling me they watch 1,000 movies a year since they were born?
Like I don't know. That means they definitely would have to do some catching up because there's no way you're watching actually 1,000 movies.
Their job has to be like at a desk and they just watch movies all day.
Yeah, like it's the most mundane job that you can just do on autopilot.
Honestly, I mean,
some days I wonder whether I should have just gotten a job like that.
Oh, every day I wonder that. Not some days. Every day.
Yeah. Probably the answer is probably no, but it is interesting to think about every once in a while.
Yeah, the grass is always greener.
Right. Yeah, that'd probably be the downsides to that I'm not even thinking of right now.
Yeah.
What are your final thoughts on this movie?
I think Terrence Malick is starting to ramp up into heavier topics with more serious themes. Hard to say, though. It's only the second film. But like 2 4.5-star films for me. I know you gave the other one 4, Badlands, in a row. If Tree of Life is really good, which you say it's good, then Terrence Malick might be in one of the highest director positions in my head.
Yeah.
Which is the most revered position that any director can have in the world. Zach
Leewald's amongst his best, rivaling David Lynch. And QT and Marty and the greats of cinema.
Jarmusch. He's another favorite of us at the movie vault.
Yeah. We love the little guy too, Jim Jarmusch.
Even though he's not.
Maybe one day we'll get into like truly obscure movies, like truly things that nobody's watched,
like Bernie Rao.
Yeah, but like a more artsy version of Bernie Rao. My final thought about this movie is that I knew that Malick's I knew in the future he would have some crazy cinematography and venture into some cool places, but I just didn't realize how soon he would improve. Because Badlands was by no means a bad movie, but you watch Days of Heaven and there is a drastic step up in quality. So it's from already good quality to like legitimately great, like greatness.
Yeah.
And for a filmmaker who is so young, at least in filmmaking terms, especially the filmmaking part. I mean, this guy he went to school for philosophy, for like writing and translating and things that were not related to film. So obviously his relationship with Jack Fisk paid off, but also his I think maybe his training just gave him a strong attention to detail
and communication, communicating ideas and themes
and vision, to where he was able to turn it into something remarkable. And as we've said before, just like further the art form and view it as an art form and take advantage of the things that film offers, that, you know, writing, music, and things that you're actually fusing with movie making.
Oh yeah.
But also establishing it as its own separate art form. So it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool to see Malick develop.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Malick. Well, with that, would you like to close the vault, Ben?
I'll close the vault. And in honor of Millie sleeping on my lap now.
She just woke up.